What is going on, everybody? It is Casual Friday. Welcome to Lineman Life Live. Today, I hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday, TGIF. Today, we're going to have a little bit of a different vibe than our regular Monday and Wednesday live stream. It's the weekend, so we're kicked back a little bit. We're casual. We're feeling nice. We're feeling loose. We're feeling relaxed. And we're going to talk about some things. Because, I was thinking earlier today when I was trying to kind of go through sports stories, see what was good, see what was looking like it'd be worth the time to really discuss. I remember that I had spoken about in the past covering a little bit of wrestling. Now, this isn't actually the recent events and the recent news of wrestling, but rather a larger situation that we'll get into as the live stream goes on. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the Observant Lineman Uche Nwaneri if you haven't already done so. Now, I did want to talk about first, before we get into all the wrestling bit, I did want to talk about this video from a high school football coach, Coach Kurt Hines. He has gone viral with this video. And if you haven't seen it yet, I think that there's a lot to take from this 47-second clip that he delivers for us, talking about a situation that occurred with him and a athlete on the football team. But I'd rather him tell it to you than me. He'll tell it to you in much better, much more balanced way, more smoother way, I guess. But this is Coach Kurt Hines. Let's listen to what he has to say about his situation with a now former player on his team.
I just had a young man come in and quit, and I couldn't be happier. I truly could not be happier. This young man is struggling all season with making it to practice, with committing, never looked happy. Some stuff going on, but I couldn't be happier because he came in, things washed, shook my hand. I said, sit down for a minute. And he started to explain, his family's always been a football family. They've always loved it. My father, my brother. And I stopped him. I said, do you love it? And he looked at me and he just breathed this deepest sigh of relief and said, no. I said, I'm proud of you. And I just saw his whole countenance change. He just smiled from ear to ear. He said, you're doing the right thing. Football is not for everyone. Couldn't be happier. Coaches, support your players if they want to be great. And if they want to be great in something other than football, support them just the same. If it's worth, stay strong.
So, pretty quick tell basically about what is going on here. Coach Hines had a young player come into his office and quit the team. This situation, as I look at it, this is something that really a lot of parents of athletes, a lot of parents need to really absorb what this man is saying, because I see it a lot. I've seen it a lot as a professional. I've seen it a lot as a college athlete, as a high school athlete. Parents sometimes try to vicariously live through their kids, and that can be harmful to your kid. I used to get questions all the time from, and I still do at times, but I used to get questions all the time from parents about, what their kids should do to be able to make it to the pros, what their kids should do to be able to make it into college football, to get a scholarship, things like that. I've listened to parents talk about having their kid, lifting weights from like sixth grade, fifth grade, having their kid like running routes. You know, we all have seen this before. We've all seen the overzealous parents who put their kids in every sport, whether they want to be in it or not. We've seen them push their kids to be something that they weren't able to be when they were young, something that they didn't have maybe the talent, maybe the time, but it was something that they loved, that maybe their parents didn't let them do, whether it be, you know, in this case we're talking about sports, but it could be anything, I guess. And you know, we've seen this story play out a lot, and it's never really, the light has never really shined on what the kid actually wants. And it's funny because every time that I've had a parent come up to me and say, hey, you know, you got any tips, this and that, you know, I kind of tell them, you know, I have to be blunt about it. I tell them, look, there's nothing, you know, if you wanted me to like coach your kid to play offensive line, I can do that, but it doesn't mean he's going to be any good. And it doesn't mean that he's going, you know, him learning something from me doesn't mean he's going to be able to use it in a way that will, you know, put him above the rest. And even at that, a lot of times these kids are under tremendous amounts of pressure from their parents to perform. You know, their parents pay for all these camps. Their parents pay for all these trainers. They pay for all these all the nutritional needs that they would have for their kid, like, you know, workout, protein shakes, all that stuff. They load these kids up. They try to turn, you know, sports into they try to make it they try to produce something. They try to force the production of an athlete out of their kid. And sometimes the kid is not with that. And I think this is a perfect example of how a coach understands that, you know, it's not really about what the coach thinks the kid can do or what the parents think the kid can do. It's about what does the kid want to do. That's what it's really about. And I actually it makes me feel good to see a coach who recognizes that and who, you know, understands that, you know, football is not for everybody. And you don't have to feel pressured to do this just because your family wants you to do it. You know, he said the kid came from a football family. The kid, you know, was likely feeling pressure to play football. He said he didn't love it. And I'm telling you right now, you can't play football. You can't play any sport. You can't do anything that requires the level of physical labor and whole dedication. You can't do anything like that unless you have a love for it, especially in the sports world. And this is a coach who understands that. And he understands that if a kid is doesn't love playing it, then you shouldn't force him to play. So I thought that was really good to see that, because I think there are coaches who are like that as well. My high school football coach was like that. And I mean that, and when I say like that, I mean the opposite of this. I was playing basketball as a freshman. I was on varsity as a freshman playing basketball. I was like trying to hoop. That was my thing. And I love football, but I mean, I was wanting to really play multiple sports. I wanted to play basketball and football. So, you know, I had finished with like, we'd already played, played some scrimmages, and, you know, they put me on varsity, and I was, you know, getting hyped for the basketball season. I'm walking down the hallway one day, and the football coach stops me, and he basically threatened me that I was either playing football or I was playing nothing, that I was not going to play two sports. And, you know, I quit basketball. I quit basketball to play football. Now, for me, I did love football. I loved football, and I loved basketball at the time. Maybe not quite as much as football, but I feel like I could do both. There were a couple other players on our team who did both, and there was no problem with that. But me, there was a problem with that with our head coach, you know. And I ain't got no ill will towards him or nothing. But you know, that was an example of a coach who, you know, kind of pushed and pressured an athlete to play the sport he wanted him to play, not to play the sport that the kid wanted to play. So just wanted to talk about that real quick because I really did appreciate the message that he's sending out here, because it's true. It's true. And I think the more that parents especially can understand that, the better that the better their relationship with their kids will be, because there are some kids, and there are a lot of kids really, who are playing sports and who are doing all of these different athletic activities, you know, because their parents are kind of pushing them into it. Their parents are being those rah-rah parents. So I think that really with this, there's a good point coming across here and saying that is, you know, something parents got to think about. Does your kid really love what you love? And if they don't, then allow them to kind of figure out what they want to do. You know, they don't know what the hell they don't know what's up now. They're young. But anyways, moving on from that. You know, it's I didn't, you know, this story popped up, and I really had no idea about this. But there's this whole thing with Dark Side of the Ring that's been trending today on Twitter, that has been kind of the talk of the internet in the entertainment realm, because, you know, wrestling entertainment it's a sports / entertainment business. And I know I talked a little bit about trying to maybe do some coverage on wrestling, and I think that this kind of fits for how I imagine kind of covering things, not because of this particular issue, but because really, you know, I want to cover stories more so than just, you know, what Monday Night Raw, what was going on Monday Night Raw. And if you've been watching my live streams for any amount of time over the last 6-8 months, then you probably caught the live stream I did with a friend of mine, Diamond Dallas Page, DDP. So that was kind of the catalyst for me to kind of want to learn more about from wrestlers about just the history of wrestling, and then also see things like these kind of documentary style media that kind of tells these stories, and obviously, you know, this is something that was done with Vice, so you know it's a documentary, so there's gonna be a certain kind of effect that they want to have on the viewer. But apparently, you know, Ric Flair is coming under a ton of flack because there is a flight stewardess who was on a plane with them, because apparently this episode of Dark Side of the Ring was focused around the plane ride from hell, so they say. And Ric Flair is had supposedly done some things on the plane that were found to be inappropriate. Now, I'm not exactly sure what year this was when this happened, but I wanted to look at a couple of things here on Twitter, and then if you guys want to roll with me on this, we're going to watch the episode because it's on YouTube. And I hope that they don't strike me down for a copyright claim, but we're going to watch and react to the plane ride from hell from the latest episode of Dark Side of the Ring. So let's get into this, into some of these things that are being said. Now, this is now from those claims that were made, this video here, I think this is a video with Howard Stern where they're talking with Ric Flair. So maybe he's giving his side of the story here. I'm not sure. Haven't watched it yet, but we're gonna check it out, and then we will kind of progress our way towards watching this this Dark Side of the Ring episode. All right, here we go.
Blair's on the phone?
He says that he has a statement to make on behalf of the WWE. You accused the WWE and Vince McMahon of firing you because you were gay. Rick disagrees with that.
Okay.
You want to speak to him?
Sure.
All right, go ahead. Rick, hi. Rick, you there?
Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with this episode in particular, but this is all on the timeline. I just been going down. I saw some stuff that looked interesting to look at. This might have nothing to do with it at all, but it says here next week's episode of Dark Side of the Ring is on Chris Kanyon and might not paint Ric Flair in the best light either. Clip thread under the post. Now, I guess this is the guy, Chris Kanyon, who is accusing Ric Flair of getting him fired from the WWF or WWE. And they got Ric Flair on the phone. I mean, of course, that's what Howard Stern would do. So let's check it out.
I'm right here, man.
How you doing, man?
That's Rick.
Great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, that is Ric Flair. He's a famous wrestler, and you work for the WWE, of course, and you're even in management. And what do you disagree with about what Chris Kanyon has said?
Well, first of all, I don't work in management. I just disagree with the fact that, and I'm disappointed because I know Chris very well, that he would blame something that's happening in his personal life on his job description. And I think it's real simple. Every wrestler in the country knows that you've got to be very good at what you do to be part of the WWE. It's a very difficult business to be successful in. And I think Chris has some shortcomings in the ring. And I'm disappointed in Chris as a person. I've known him a long time, that he would blame his shortcomings on something that's going on in his personal life.
Well, we had in the wrestler, who's the guy who just made the movie?
John Cena.
We just had John Cena, and he said that.
Yeah, I don't think this really. This is what's, I guess, is coming next week. They're going to be talking about this, but we'll go through it.
Was a good guy, he said, but he didn't have the skills to really be a WWE wrestler.
Well, he said he didn't have a great act. You know, he didn't act the part well.
Yeah, Chris has got the skill, but it takes a lot more than technical skills to be good in the WWE or in a sport of professional wrestling. And Chris, I think, has got all the attributes. He doesn't have the act. John made a good point.
What about that, Chris? You were in the WWE, and your act was, you say, good until you became an out gay person.
My act was absolutely fine. You know, it all depends on what they give you, what storylines they write you. I think a lot of the writers knew. Rick, you know Arn Anderson knew for a fact I was gay back in WCW. I mean, he's your best friend.
I had no idea.
All right. It was not a well-kept secret in wrestling, and you know, it figured into the storylines they gave me. Rick, you know as well as I do. If they don't give you a storyline, if they beat you every week, you're not going to be over.
Chris, we're talking about your sexuality right now. We're not talking about.
No, that ain't what you were talking about. You were talking about I didn't have what it took to be a WWE, even though
you as a person, as a man, for blaming your choices in life on the business.
It's not a choice, first of all.
You have the skills, and you had the ability, and you had the opportunity.
All right, that was that was about to get heated. But anyways,
On the phone?
there's some other stuff in here. Now, I guess this is being reported. I don't know if this has been validated or not. I have no idea. But I guess CarShield has paused their Ric Flair ad campaign following Dark Side of the Ring, the Dark Side of the Ring episode. And that seems like the beginnings of a canceling. Jeez. Now, I mean, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this, I guess. I mean, I'm looking at the chat. Sorry. No, I mean, I don't really know how to feel about this because this is, I mean, it's coming up on a documentary style TV show, right? So do we have the full context, full story? I guess we'll figure that out once we look at this episode. So, I mean, we probably should have just looked at the episode to begin with. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. I'm going to jump right into this. I had it pulled up here. It started looking like it was getting juicy. So I said, you know what? Let's watch this during the live stream. So we're going to go through this. I'll stop at parts, you know, try and break things up here. But we're going to try and go through this and watch this, The Plane Ride from Hell, Dark Side of the Ring, full episode from Vice. Vice, please do not copyright strike my live stream. I'm doing a reaction. Let's go.
After a sellout European tour, the World Wrestling Federation's top stars and management boarded a private 757 jet in London to return home.
Every seat on the plane was a first-class seat. It cost us a lot of money, but it made it more convenient.
They got that 1990s spy thriller music going on.
For the talent to travel.
What was supposed to be a triumphant flight in decadence descended into a nightmare at 30,000 feet.
The party starts when you get on them flights and you just start drinking. But that night, it was too much.
When you have an open bar.
He said, man, it's like, we party on all the flights, we get some drinks, this and that. But man, it was just too much this time. Shit.
And you're sitting there for 7 hours. Of course these things are going to happen.
Naked men with robes, guys passing out, drinking, busting each other open, cutting ponytails off.
Wow.
Sounds like hell to me.
Like, I just knew, okay, the boys are being boys, and I'm not going back there at all.
I remember thinking, like, is somebody gonna say that this has gone too far?
Oh, not you. You're not going to say it. Is somebody going to stop this?
The talent was just crazy. I mean, they were great guys, don't get me wrong.
They act like asses. Children.
The mid-air collision between intoxicated wrestlers and a flight crew determined to prevent an all-out disaster would erupt into one of wrestling's most infamous scandals.
I think people have no...
How come I never heard of this? I never heard of this. This was not something that, I guess it happened back in the day before the internet, before social media. So, yeah, but I never remember ever hearing about something like this.
No idea what really goes on sometimes, especially back then in pro wrestling. And this is just like a capsule of what pro wrestling was like in that era.
It was just a normal occurrence for a crazy bunch of wrestlers on a plane. Seems like a crazy story to probably everyone who is watching this outside of professional wrestlers.
If I never talked about the plane ride from hell again in my life, I would be very happy.
Dark side of the ring.
The deal is finalized with WCW. However, the contract reads Shane McMahon.
By the early 2000s, the WWF is riding a wave of unprecedented success with a roster of breakout stars and sellout crowds across the world.
Business was going really well for the WWE. Selling tickets, pay-per-view buy rates. Everybody was making money.
Man, I remember those days when you would have like WrestleMania. WrestleMania in the 90s and early 2000s, I mean, you couldn't touch those. You couldn't touch them. They were on pay-per-view, so I couldn't watch them. My parents wasn't going for that shit. But I used to try to like keep up with what was going on because I would watch wrestling on the weekends. So it's always like, who won WrestleMania? Who has the belt? Who has this? Who has that? So, yeah.
Crowds were there every night. You're selling houses everywhere you go. Europe, the States, Canada, and everything. I mean, our show was booming.
During this surge in popularity, CEO Vince McMahon acquires his competitors WCW and ECW, consolidating the industry's biggest players into an undisputed monopoly of the wrestling world.
I, Vince McMahon, bought my competition.
The bubble had burst in wrestling. There was literally the WWE, nothing else. If you want to make a full-time living in professional wrestling, it was the only place to be. My name is Tommy Dreamer, and I'm known as the innovator of violence. It was a much different time. There was holdovers from ECW and WCW, and we're all just trying to find our way in the WWE.
Damn.
You gotta wonder how long he'd been planning this ECW assault on the WWF.
On the WWF. Classic.
I'm Jim Ross, and I was the Vice President of Talent Relations. My job, in a nutshell, was the overall management of the talents that appeared on television.
The WWF's roster exploded in size and stature by securing talent from their former
that was definitely the golden age of WWE. Like, that was the golden age. That was their prime. I think that was prime WWE. Now you got AEW. That's another thing that they're wondering about, is whether or not, because I guess Ric Flair was supposed to be on AEW. And that's Tony Khan's wrestling company. And that might be, he might have lost that. We never know. We'll find out soon, I'm sure.
Rivals, while also welcoming back returning legends.
There's the Nature Boy! We're partners! Flair and McMahon are partners! Yeah!
Flair's a legend.
I remember that.
Our younger guys grew up watching him, idolizing him, and trying to take things from Rick's game and add to
The
theirs.
Nature Boy.
So yeah, having Rick in the locker room was a positive thing. I love my job. I love helping build that talent roster. Because I think that having those talents was a great reason. Perhaps we could say the only reason.
I'm telling you, this shit was prime WWE. Prime. ECW. Y'all think ECW was better? I never watched ECW. That's the thing. I never watched it. Never watched it. Oh, I watched WCW and I watched WWF.
It blew up.
Ooh.
Everything was getting better. Millions upon millions of dollars. Thanks to the men and the women that came to work for us on that team. As the momentum in the States
Legends, all them legends over there.
Momentum in the UK grew.
In May 2002, the company travels to Europe for a 4-day tour, concluding with a sold-out pay-per-view event in London.
It's probably one of the best crowds when we go overseas.
Wembley. We played at Wembley Stadium when I was in Jacksonville. I think we still play at Wembley Stadium. Jaguars still play there. It's a nice stadium.
So we're always amped up. We're always looking forward to it. And to be honest, the pay's pretty good when we go overseas because the crowds are so big. So yeah, I'd say the morale was high, and we were stoked to have some good times. My name is PJ Polacco, and you may know me as the hardcore icon, Just Incredible. Some of the big names on that trip were certainly Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Undertaker was on the flight. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. Brock Lesnar was on the flight, Ric Flair was on the flight, and many others, so it was stacked.
It's a long flight, and we thought that by chartering a customized jet that we were being as talent friendly as we could. Unfortunately, it didn't work out well.
Them motherfuckers planted the seeds for destruction. They planted the seeds for destruction. What we got over here? And I might be NWO. Who's watching NWO?
My name is Heidi Doyle, and in 2002, I was a flight attendant on the European charter for the WWE. I worked for a company called SportsJet.
Hold up, so this was she said 1992? I think that's what she said.
It was for the WWE. In 2002, I
Oh,
was
2002.
on the
Okay.
European charter for the WWE. I worked for a company called SportsJet. It was a private airline that flew many of the different sports teams out of the Phoenix area, the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Coyotes. We also flew the Utah Jazz and the Mariners. A normal commercial Boeing 757 would have 190 seats, and our flight had 50 leather seats and bigger carpet than I've ever had in my own house. There's couches and lounge areas. It's just not a very bad way to travel. It costs a lot to do it privately, but you also get many benefits. You get to order your own food, you know what you're gonna eat, you know you're all gonna be comfortable. You know that you don't have to deal with anybody of the general public on the airplane. You're just amongst the group that's your people.
It's just nice to know that we're not going to
That chartered flight.
Like sometimes when the boys are on flights and they're a bit obnoxious, it's kind of like you go like, oh gosh, are we gonna, sorry. Hi, I'm Terry Reynolds, and I was a passenger on the plane ride from hell.
This shit about to be lit. They are about, I mean, I don't know, maybe you guys know more than I do. Because again, like I said, I don't remember this. Maybe I was too young to have actually heard about this in a informative way. But I'm assuming that this is something that was already well known in regards to this event in the wrestling community. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is coming out now on this Vice series. But is it really that? Is it something that's obscure that a lot of people don't know about, or is it actually like, is this something that's like the worst kept secret in the wrestling world? You know what I mean? Like, let me know.
I remember sitting in the first class section. I think Jim Ross was up there, Linda, and Vince.
The front had a lounge area, so it was kind of like your first class, I guess, of the airplanes. And generally the coaches and the managers sat up there. And in this case, Vince McMahon and his wife, they were up there, and then the wrestlers were in the back. So I was in the back with the majority of the wrestlers.
Everything just a blur.
In the very back was getting them the drinks, getting the meals out to them. They were hungry. They wanted to try all the different meals that were on the airplane. Ric Flair had talked to all of us a lot. He was very chatty, and he was kind of like the captain of the team, I would say. He had that kind of feel, and he was very, very nice and personable to us. He was a little flirty, I think.
Flirtatious.
99% of the time we had men. That's who we were working with. You just had to be aware of getting too comfortable, I think, because that can always just create a situation that different people can have different thoughts of the level of comfortableness. But on the flight to Europe, there's no problems.
After an uneventful 8-hour flight across the Atlantic, the charter arrives at its first stop on the tour, Cologne, Germany.
My name is Rob Van Dam.
Dang, I kind of felt like that was a dang cell phone for a second. I'm like, who got a cell phone back, like recording like that back in 2002? Shoot, some of these cats, you see their cell phones they record with now, it'd be garbage.
WWE Hall of Famer and the whole damn show. It's cool to see how...
He said, I'm the coolest motherfucker you're ever gonna meet. With his purple aviators. Come on, man, you got to get you that presidential tent. You know what I mean? That presidential tent. Can't see nothing. Can't see nothing.
You affect these other cultures, you know, in other countries.
They had some diehard fans, let me tell you what. The Germans were very into the WWE, and it was very, it was an intense, enlightening experience, the match was.
Our flight attendants, they were with us almost every day. Some came to the shows, some were partying at the hotels, with the wrestlers at the bars.
In the 80s and 90s, these flight attendants, they kind of would party with you, hang out with you in the back, drink with you. Hello, I'm Michael Chioda, worked for the World Wrestling Entertainment for 35 years.
He looked like a referee.
Well, I used to go out, meet up with some flight attendants down at the bar. They might be staying at the same hotel, or you'd go to their hotel, 5-minute cab ride.
We went downstairs and had drinks when the wrestlers came back from the first match in Germany. We chatted a little bit with them that first night. It was my first trip back to work after having a baby, and I was so enjoying my time resting in my room and getting to order room service and not have to wake up at all hours of the night that I only went to the one match in Germany.
You literally will wrestle in Germany, and the next day you wake up, you're in Scotland. You wake up the next day, you're in London.
By the time we got to London, usually everybody's really stoked. I remember it being a Saturday night because that's when the pay-per-view aired traditionally over there.
And it was WWE's pay-per-view Insurrection.
Insurrection.
It was a packed house. The European crowds love us.
All the tickets for this event sold out in 21 minutes.
I remember the show being solid. The talent seemed to be happy with their performances. And they were even more happy to get back on the plane and go home.
Oh, well, I'd been away from my daughter for the first time, and I was more than excited to go see her again.
The excitement to return home is quickly deflated as the passengers are delivered troubling news.
Everyone took their seats, and we taxied out onto the tarmac, and we got advised that we were on a weather hold from Connecticut. When we were told it was a weather delay, I bet we probably all thought maybe 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour tops.
Well, we were delayed for 7 hours before.
Wow. 7-hour delay? So you already know what time it is. These cats have been, they eat their food. They probably, doze off for a little bit. They wake up. They're still delayed. Now they want something to drink. Whew. Perfect storm.
Before the plane takes off.
So we sat on the tarmac for a little while. Commercial airlines, you would all be familiar with the small little mini bottles so we had just normal bottles.
They probably went through everything.
The liquor cart ran out of alcohol, and another liquor cart was ordered at their request, and that was also drank. So that liquor cart ran out.
Yep.
The third one was ordered.
And how common is it to go through a cart before a plane takes off?
I've never ever done it ever before, and never again. Never, and we went through 3.
Imagine your varsity football team. They've just won a game, except they can't get out of the parking lot, and there's cases and cases of beer. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
A bunch of high school guys.
To say it's high school is really like giving it too much. It's more like 5th grade.
Even though it was...
He says more like 5th grade.
We served the drinks still, but that became not the case. They started to serve themselves the drinks, and they didn't want our help. I was very concerned about carts being replenished on the ground.
If they were to try to cut us off, we would have gotten to that booze. Somebody would have. Flair probably could have thrown a couple $1,000 at him and said, "Here, take this. We're gonna get that liquor." We would have got the liquor. Absolutely.
I think the relief that they're finally going home was cause for celebration. And they only got a small window now to really let their hair down and become stupid. And that's what a lot of them chose to do.
Dark Side of the Ring returns.
It just got crazier and crazier. It hooked you into at 9.
Hours, passengers aborted on the tarmac and indulged. After spending several grueling hours grounded on the tarmac and indulging in an unlimited supply of alcohol, the passengers aboard WWF's private charter are relieved as the jet is finally cleared for takeoff.
I don't remember how long we'd been up in the air before. It was very, very evident that we had a lot of drunk people.
Oh, shoot, the boys.
It was already a shit show.
An hour. When you're doing GHB or pills or anything like that, Percocets or Vicodins and stuff that were around, you could do a lot of damage, period, in 1 hour.
But it was always booze and pills in the WWE because we had doctor's prescriptions, and as long as you had a doctor's prescription, it was okay.
He ain't lying. He is not lying, because in the NFL, it was the same way. It was the exact same way. We had access to all the drugs. Anything you wanted, as far as prescription goes, you could get. The team on Saturday mornings, everybody was given there was a prescription bag waiting in your locker when you got in there on Saturday morning. And when I was playing, it was what, 2 Vicodins? There were 2 Vicodins in a prescription bottle for every player on the team. Like, they're doping you up so you don't feel that pain that you have after playing in the game, where you're violently smashing into each other. I can imagine it's the same way for these guys. I know guys I knew guys on the roster who, I mean, these cats, you could tell that they were addicted to it, because they would literally walk the locker room on Saturdays and try and buy cats pills. And I had like a backpack full of them because I never took them. So, shit, I ain't gonna front. I sold that shit for his top price. I was like, motherfucker, I need $5,000 if you want these. Shoot. Because ain't nobody else holding on to their shit like that. And I got a backpack full of these mugs. So technically, I may have just admitted to a crime, but I digress.
Of course it wasn't, because, we'd have doctors write us whatever we wanted.
Halcyons, GHB, Placidil. No, the Placidils I think were in the early 90s. But I know there was some GHB and Halcyons on the flight. Halcyons were some things that we took sometimes just to go to sleep for a long period of time.
So you got a plane full of drunk, drugged up professional wrestlers who had to wait 7 hours on a tarmac, and they didn't think that it was a good idea. They didn't maybe think for 1 second that this shit was going to get out of control. I mean, that was a foregone conclusion the moment that they got through that first cart of alcohol.
And sometimes you use them for a rib too.
Way back in the day, it used to be called H-bombing, and it was halcyons. And I've seen so many guys dropping these H-bombs in the drinks in order to get the mark to pass out. They shave his head, whatever they do. Girls, local girls, were put out so the boys could have their way with them while they're out. I mean, this was...
Wow.
It was kind of normal in some of the places that I've been.
Never leave your drink.
Hold on. So they were knocking people out with GHB. That's a date rape drug, isn't it? That's crazy.
Exposed. Because the boys think seeing somebody froth at the mouth and slur their speech, they can't stand up, manage their own faculties, is funny. The story was out that Michael got H-bombed.
What was his role at that point?
Michael Hayes worked at Creative at that point in time. I don't know if he was officially an agent, coach, a producer. They've gone through several names. They all do the same thing. With the halcyon in his body. And I don't know what else could have been in there. He was not himself. And he made bad decisions.
Bradshaw had gotten split open the night of the pay-per-view.
Oh, yes! He is busted open!
As Bradshaw is sleeping, Michael Hayes just knocked him in his head and reopened the wound.
Oh!
So now JBL is bleeding all over his shirt. So JBL slapped him and knocked him out.
Knocked out Michael Hayes. We're like, holy shit.
He slapped this motherfucker, knocked him clean out. I mean, that's like a Charlie Murphy, Rick James story.
Then I hear like chanting for X-Pac.
X-Pac was one of the sweetest guys in the world. He really is. Jay Strongbow used to call him the trailer hitch because he's always following the big load of Hall and Nash.
I want to know to get my hands on Austin.
But he wanted to be accepted so badly and perceived as a main event guy.
Michael Hayes had been burying me in the booking meetings, and he's got that ponytail, that mullet. So as he's out cold, I grabbed that tail and I lifted up my tongue. I just went whack.
I remember the big pop. And it was like holding up the title, but he had the ponytail.
Wow. They wildin'.
Back in the day, you were not allowed to sleep on those flights. You would end up with a shaved eyebrow. You always had to have one eye open, so to speak, when you're on a plane full of the boys.
I had my hat on, my sunglasses, even though it was nighttime. You had to wear all that stuff because you didn't know who's coming by with shaving cream. If somebody went to lift your shades up, you had a chance of waking up. Or take your hat off, you have a chance of waking up and kicking out real quick.
The roster is especially on guard for any potential hijinks, finding themselves in the presence of one of the industry's most legendary pranksters.
What else would you expect from Mr. Perfect?
Kurt, he knows how to rib.
Kurt
He's
Angle.
one of the best ribbers in the business.
Ribs started happening once Kurt came back into the company. Kurt would always play with Brock.
Brock was sitting in his chair, and Kurt Hennig put shaving cream on his head. He went splat and splatted on his head.
Hey, man, this dude was wild, and he's trying to get his ass whooped by everybody.
Next thing I know, Brock is chasing Kurt like a full sprint, you know, like wham, wham. Brock went right behind him.
And then Brock just swoops him up. So now you have Brock Lesnar, who's 6'4", and he's picking up Kurt Hennig, who's about 6'4".
They went into one row, like a bunch of the guys had to move.
So they would go from one side of the fuselage and then into the other, and the overhead bins got broken, and tables got broken, and armrests got broken off.
Things started to break, yeah, because they're just so big. Like, I do remember one of the seats, like the middle of the seat came completely off.
And as a safety professional, there's not a damn thing I can do to stop these two men. Like, there's not a damn thing I can do to get them to hear my voice. One of the wrestlers had commandeered our PA. So in the middle of the fight going on, we have someone yelling into the airplane, "We're gonna die, we're all gonna die."
Hell no! Hell no! Hey, man, this dude commandeered the PA system and started yelling, "We're all gonna die, we're gonna die." Like, now it's really about to be pandemonium.
The back of the airplane, trying to get these two men to stop slamming each other against the fuselage. And they wouldn't even listen to him.
One of our illustrious agents said, "You need to come back here." So I go back there, and they're play fighting. It's just they're play fighting in the emergency exit room.
Brock picks Kurt up, and then they hit the emergency door.
Oh!
This was a big boom. Everyone jumped up, and we're like, stop, stop.
It was their own teammates that finally got it to stop because they were scared.
I'm not a mechanical engineer. I don't know what all it takes to pop that security door, but I didn't want to find out at 30,000 feet above.
Hell no.
Could you imagine what happens if that door opened? If you think about it, it's physically impossible to open that door.
They would have no idea of knowing the door couldn't pop out. But they were throwing each other against the fuselage, and if that fuselage breaks, the airplane could depressurize it. Now you're doing an emergency landing, and where are you going to land if you're over the Atlantic? The weight and the size that they are of wrestlers, I mean, they could go through a wall in a house. Why couldn't they go through a wall in an airplane?
Because just the banging, was, Brock is so big.
He was just thick, solid, big
Look,
bears, right?
freaking
solid boy, young. He was getting a big push.
Brock was very new to the business, and he exposed himself to me at the Insurrection pay-per-view like a real dick.
Wow.
I remember that night I was doing interviews.
Damn. This cat just whipped his junk out on her.
And Jackie in a tag team match. I was backstage, and I hear my name called, and Brock was in this room. Dustin was in the room, my ex-husband at the time. And Brock did the whole thing. I no-sold it, went to my dressing room. Dustin came in, he's like, "Don't sell it." I'm like, "I'm not selling it. I didn't sell it. I'm not gonna." In other words, let it lie. Leave it alone.
Attempts to reach Brock Lesnar went unreturned. He ain't want shit to do with this. Nothing. Nada. He's like, no, sir. Y'all ain't finna get a quote from me.
I had complaints about Brock Lesnar's behavior on the plane. But I don't recall any advances or reported advances from Brock to Terry Reynolds.
I mean, look, man, these people knew what was going on. You know they knew what was going on. If you're somebody who's that high up in the WWE, you know what's going on because there's always a snitch. There's always somebody telling.
Could it have happened? Of course, it could have happened. It could have happened. I did my job to the best of my ability to look out for the talent. I can't follow everybody around to see if they're acting like an adult. That should not be my job. Really...
Fair point. I was just about to say that's a cop-out, but he's making a fair point, actually. It's not his job to make sure that adults act like adults. It's his job to make sure that they're doing their job correctly. So this entire, did he probably hear whisperings about some of the stuff that was going on? Absolutely. I don't doubt that for a second. But it's still not up to him to, go and double check on these things per se, because that's really not in his job description. But, again, this is likely all, a lot of this will be things that are unconfirmed. So you really don't know. But it's the culture. That's really what it boils down to. The culture is what will always be the root issue when you have situations like this happen. Because it's not, so these aren't just out of the blue things. These are things that have been happening, or these are things that of the individuals who participate in them. And, whether it's a secret, a badly kept secret, or just, boldly out in the open, it happens in cultures that are not, set up to kind of keep checks and balances on those kinds of things. So,
really should.
Crazy.
Running.
After the terrifying brawl at 30,000 feet, the passengers try to settle in as the WWF roster is due to perform on live television the following day.
Got TVs tomorrow, it's like, let's get some rest now. I'm leaning against the window, sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear this very familiar voice. And Dustin, my ex-husband, starts singing a David Allan Coe song called Pledging My Love. Forever, my darling, my love will be true. Always and forever, I'll love only you. I immediately am like, mortified. Everyone that's just drifted off to sleep is now woken up by,
Started it back up.
I was about to get up and go back there and tell him to stop. But Polly was across the aisle, and he looked at me, he's like, don't sell it, don't sell it. So I left it alone.
It seems like whenever somebody does something to you, people say don't sell it.
Because that's just the smartest way to deal with our business. Just don't sell it.
The culture. That's what it is. That's the culture. So that culture has already been perpetrated or has already been perpetuated throughout, decades, years at that point, but not decades like now, but years back then. It's already been set in place. What's acceptable, what you let pass for the sake of convenience rather than what's right. So, yeah, it's not surprising that some of the things that are being said in this documentary are being said. It's not surprising at all.
If Dustin could sing, it would have made it a little bit easier. But he couldn't carry a tune in a bucket.
I did not like his behavior. I generally felt for the guy in the sense he was obviously hurting, That pain was real. No, I don't like to see anyone hurting like that. However, he still should have given me my microphone back.
It got uncomfortable. Like, JR had to stop that. You know, he literally went up to Dustin and said,
Sit your ass down. Go to sleep. You know, give us all a break.
Eventually he passed out. That's how we got our PA back. He fell asleep, and I got the microphone from him.
if I was a flight attendant, to be on that flight that night would have been probably one of the worst experiences of my career. Some young ladies just trying to do their job and just trying to get home. You know, I could imagine it being very disheartening for them and scary in some ways, I'm sure.
Hours into the flight, the mid-air chaos shows no signs of slowing down.
There was another situation that occurred with Ric Flair for me that was very uncomfortable.
Uh-oh, here we go. This is it. This is it. Damn, Rick. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Sometimes, as a joke, Ric Flair would put on his robe, not wear anything else, and walk that aisle like Ric Flair, and then open it up and woo.
That's the big high spot. I wanted to see Rick coming out naked in his robe, and so he did it on the airplane for everybody. And that's what the guys want to see. That's what makes them laugh.
He could move his hips and twirl it, and so his well-endowed penis spins around like a helicopter. So that's, hey, he's the nature boy for a reason. He's got a hammer on him.
He's the life of the party.
So casually talking about other men's penises. That's new for me.
And if you know him, you know where to exit the party and go to your own safe place, or you don't know the rules and you find yourself in deep water. And that may have happened.
And I was in the galley. The galley is where our little kitchen area on an airplane. Ric Flair was naked in a cape only, and then he decided to come back to the galley to get a Coke. And then he wouldn't leave the galley. He had me up back against the back door, and I couldn't move. I couldn't get away from him. I couldn't move. He was spinning around his penis, and he wanted me to touch it, and he took my hand and put it on him.
Ric Flair is not going to try to impose by force any sexual stuff onto anybody. He's just flaunting, styling and profiling, doing like the Ric Flair stuff where everybody's going to laugh about it. But obviously someone took offense to it.
I don't know if I like how he's framing that whole situation. You know, at the end of the day, there's a difference between flaunting and then, you know, making somebody grab your junk. Now, if you're flaunting, he may walk up to where, you know, where those flight attendants are, their general vicinity, and he might, you know, do his little jiggle dance and then turn around and walk back down the other way down the aisle and do your thing. I mean, that to me would be the extent of where you could kind of have that flaunting persona as a prankster, as a guy who does that. That's kind of that edge right there. You're in the vicinity. Maybe they're on a private jet. Maybe he does wiggle his shit in, you know, and they see him and he's looking at him. But if he turns around and goes back on about his pranking way, then I think that majority of people might say, okay, it's gross. You know, they'll be like, there'll be some that'll be like, that's gross. There'll be some that'll be like, that's funny. But at least that's where it ends. So if you got her cornered in the corner of the back of that little galley area, that's a different story. Just that part, having her cornered in there, that's a different story. You know, from there, you have nothing but problems that could potentially come your way.
I remember him crowding the flight attendant, like in the aisleway back there by the bathroom where it's like real skinny and you can't fit two people through there and stuff. I remember him like crowding her and you know, trying to make her touch him and stuff.
And he kept me back there for I don't know how long, but a felt like a really long time. It wasn't short, like it was minutes. And I asked him to please stop, and he wouldn't.
Ric Flair has previously stated that there is no truth to these allegations. Well, that is definitely an expected response, I would say. But, wow.
I don't remember somebody really helping me except for one, I believe, Gold Dust, who had the mic. I do believe he told Ric Flair he should leave me alone eventually. He should leave me alone. And maybe that's why I didn't get as angry about the mic as maybe I should have. You know, I think he did try to help me, and he was the only one that did.
Dark Side of the Ring returns.
It just got crazier and crazier.
Ring gone to
Thursday.
Let's talk about Scott Hall for a second. What's his state at this point?
Scott's issues have been well documented. He's documented. He had issues with substance abuse. We were not doing him any favors putting him back on the road so he could resume his routines. But we didn't do him justice. But we didn't know how bad it was. And for those that think we should have known, well, we didn't. You don't know until you see it. You interact with it.
We were quite close to landing, and I came to Scott Hall, who had just woken up. I had offered him breakfast, and he grabbed my shirt and pulled me down, and my shirt buttons got ripped. And he had told me what he was gonna do to me.
Do you remember what he said?
He said a number of things, but what I do remember is, as my shirt ripped, he told me he was gonna lick me. And then he proceeded to try to do that, which, I don't want to say scary, because that might sound too dramatic, but it was a moment of great violation, discomfort, to have a person put their hands on you without you wanting them to do that, and to not let go when you ask them to. And to create a level of fear when you're there to do a job, and you're doing your job, and now you have to be afraid that you're gonna get hurt. It didn't feel to me that he was gonna let go anytime soon. And then he passed out. And I was able to, dislodge him from me.
I think that Kurt H-bombed me. Because I've been taking pills and drinking for a lot of years at that point, and I was out.
After that happened with Scott Hall, I never left the galley. I didn't serve anyone. And they got angry at me for that. They wanted more food and drinks, and I was done. I didn't come out of the galley again.
Scott Hall has previously insisted that he has no recollection of the events that took place on this flight. And I mean, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. As yacked up as they were, I would, and this dude had a huge substance problem with pills. I don't doubt it. I really don't doubt it. He probably does not even remember that happened in any way, shape, or form. But that don't mean it didn't happen. That don't mean it didn't happen. But that's wild. That is crazy.
After spending a total of 14 nightmarish hours on the plane, the weary passengers and crew finally touched down on American soil.
When they landed and I heard the door open, it was a very, very excellent feeling to not be over the Atlantic anymore. It was a long flight. It was a very long flight.
The plane was trashed. Blankets, pillows, drinks, cups, food stepped on. The normal flight, they're passing by 3 or 4 times with trash bags and this and that. Well, this wasn't a normal flight, and I think Scott was passed out. I think they were actually worried he was dead, you know? So they're all stressed, like they got a dead person on this flight now, and I'm like, oh boy, don't worry, he'll kick out. You know, it's like, he'll kick out.
He wouldn't wake up. So I'm picking him up, and I had to get him a wheelchair and literally take him through customs myself. I put the sunglasses on him, laid him there, and he's just kind of, you know. I had to get his passport, had to say that he had some kind of condition. And there I am wheeling Razor through, you know, customs, and there's Jim Ross. He had the black hat on and just looking at me with disgust, and I'm like, I'm here, I'm wheeling him.
Yeah, he's like, I'm trying to help this cat.
Once we landed, Michael Hayes woke up and his ponytail was missing. And Michael Hayes was pissed off about it. He was hell-bent to find out who did it. You know who did it, you know who did it. And would have fought the entire plane if he could have.
He was really angry. He was really angry.
And when we landed, we started to pick up the airplane, and there was vomit, and there was blood. There was syringes found in seatback pockets and other places. And
wow.
No, we're not cleaning this airplane. We're gonna get off right now. And my superior's saying, no, you need to clean the airplane. Me just walking off the airplane, you know.
Imagine having to clean up an airplane after that kind of mess. Imagine that. My goodness. Syringes? So cats were shooting up on the plane. Holy shit. Vomit, blood. Yeah, I would have walked off. I'd have been like, no. Y'all go get a professional cleaning crew to come handle this. I ain't touching nada. Not nada. Nothing. That's ridiculous.
That happened on Delta or American or whatever. When we got back to the States, the FBI would have been waiting on us.
There should have been more repercussions for sure. There should have been some. I don't know. They did have repercussions. I learned later, but they were only, I think, because they knew they had to do something, you know, because it didn't look real good for Vince McMahon's organization, I don't think.
For better or for worse, I'm taking ownership. But it was a black eye. Good thing about a black eye, you heal.
So we got like what, 13 minutes left of this? Yeah, let's see where the rest of this goes.
You in 9.
Vince
on Vice.
Shortly after landing, Vince McMahon and Jim Ross urgently meet to discuss repercussions for the flight's most egregious acts.
I just couldn't believe everything was getting out of control with Vince on the flight, you know, but it did. It got out of control. I don't know. I don't know what Vince was doing during this whole time.
That's a good question. Where the hell was the owner of the damn company? Vince McMahon was on the flight. How did all this shit go down with him on it?
Or what?
Vince was well aware of it, but it was my job to handle. That's why I'm still embarrassed about it this very day.
Plausible deniability. You already know that's what Vince is going to run with. Oh, I was asleep. I didn't know any of this was happening.
It was my job to handle.
Vince McMahon makes the decisions, but Jim Ross is the one who has to execute them. Jim Ross is the guy who has to fire you as well. Jim Ross is the guy who has to tell you, hey, you're messing up. He's the guy who has to fine you. That's that position.
It wasn't a tough decision on my part to cut some guys from the roster because it's what Vince McMahon told me to do. And the guy that writes the checks has the last say. I was troubled by Kurt firing. I just thought he had a bad night with the boys. He had a reputation of being kind of a practical joker, and Vince had enough of it.
And you kind of figure maybe, okay, Kurt got fired, but then he's going to come back and circle his way around at some point, which he would have, I'm sure. But he passed away. not too far after that.
I thought that was Kurt Angle.
And Razor, I think it was just his drug addiction that kind of maybe just his career kind of slipped away there.
We let Scott go within hours after we got back to the States. I was told to cut him now, and so I called him at home, and I just said, I think we made a mistake. You're not ready to get back on the road. And until you're better suited to handle your demons, we need to put you back in your comfort zone, which meant at home primarily. Dustin Rhodes is one of my favorite people in the world. We go back a long way. I don't know if it was just the rebound of his divorce with Terry, what it was, but he was in a tough place. But no excuse. So, he was dipping his snuff and using the seatback cushion as a spittoon.
Shit!
Two options. Find him, then I'll get his attention, or fire him. Which I thought was extreme and did not need to happen. That was my call. He learned from his mistakes. He was immature. He had substance abuse issues. And sometimes he controlled them and sometimes he didn't. But the bottom line is that we have to stop in our society letting others' transgressions go without punishment.
How does it that Ric Flair evaded any sort of suspension or anything like that?
Awkward silence.
Good question. I guess, lack of a better term, he was a made man. And he was such a high-level made man that he got a pass. Was it the right thing to do? I don't know. You're listening to it, folks. You decide. He got a pass.
As the WWF deals with the fallout from the
He got a fucking pass. Then that might be validation that he did what is claimed. Hey, I mean, that makes sense.
flight, Heidi is forced to consider her next steps.
I remember walking off the airplane on the tarmac, and we went to a hotel that was quite nearby and talking about how horrible, and the girls from the front saying they didn't know that it was that, that it was that bad. And then I just went to my hotel room and I took a shower and I cried. I called SportsJet. They said that was unfortunate that had occurred on the airplane. They preferred that we kept it to ourselves, the story, because we work with professional athletes and things happen on airplanes. And they let us know it was expected that we would respect the privacy of our clients. So then you have to figure out how you tell your husband, how was your trip? Well, it wasn't excellent. What do you tell your husband? It can even create situations where they say, well, why did that happen to you? Or what did you do to make them do that to you? And I would say that might be the worst question you could ever ask somebody who's been hurt, because you already feel a sense of, what did I do? Did I smile? Was I too nice to him? And made you feel almost like you'd done something wrong when I hadn't. But I know there was another girl on the flight that was very upset about things that had occurred to her. She went to a lawyer, and then she contacted me and said I should do that as well.
If I filed a lawsuit for every time something like that happened to me, dear God, I would be in court for all my adult life.
My sense of it was that
It's the culture. Damn, she just pretty much laid it out like she just got used to the culture. So it must have happened to her a lot.
the company wanted to address this matter, take it off our books, do the right thing by those that had complaints, and then move on.
There was an agreement that was reached, and they offered us a settlement. My husband just didn't want the story told to the public, maybe just to protect our daughter, or him, us, I don't know. So he was very, very supportive of the settlement. It's sad that money has to be that compensation. Like, I think definitely truth and honesty and change is more powerful, but money is what ends up on the table, I think, and then it also buys you silence, which then can add to another layer of the guilt of a victim. Like, it can be a cycle that's not good, yeah, perpetually bad.
If that's how she felt, maybe she should have not taken a payout and went to the fullest extent of the law to then truly put this heinous person in jail.
Man, come on. Shut your ass up. See, that's the thing. That's the thing. You don't have to say this shit. Just leave it be. Like, you didn't see what happened. You don't know what happened. So just leave it be because you don't know. People will take settlements for many different reasons. I mean, I'm sure in that situation, one, who wants to be in court for years? Who wants to go through police investigation? I mean, in their situation, that was probably the easier solution, knowing that they probably had been told that there were guys who got fired, there were guys who got, fined. So, I mean, hey, in that moment, I can understand if somebody's like, you know what, let's just get this over with, let's get it done with, and let's, boom, boom. Now, it's other people who come in and try and bring it into the limelight after that. So, thanks, Vice.
My opinion.
People have their own opinions of what happened, what the damage was, though no one should really have their opinion when it didn't happen to them, but they do. They say, well, it wasn't that bad, you're okay, aren't you? And now you have to live with a pain or a memory of something that you didn't bring about, and that takes some work.
After the exhausting European tour, wrestlers and management report for a live taping of Monday Night Raw a mere 24 hours after the plane touchdown in Connecticut.
We had TV that day, on Monday. Of course, the talents. AJR. What? Did you see what they did to Hayes' ponytail? No, what? Michael Hayes' ponytail was put into a sandwich bag that was taped to the locker room door at Raw on Monday until I saw it. And I took it down, threw it away.
Exposure of these scandalous events would mark a turning point for the WWF, propelling it to rein in the public antics of its performers. In a symbolic twist of fate, the aftermath of the infamous plane ride from hell coincided on the same day the company was legally forced to rebrand its identity.
Young talents coming in the business after that era had heard all the stories, saw the remnants, saw guys that had made millions of dollars not have two quarters rubbed together. And I think they learned from their predecessors.
Nice job.
It's a different culture. It's a different era. I think that's the upshot, and maybe good news, that incidents like the plane ride from hell smarten some of these younger kids up. I want to be in the wrestling business. I've always idolized this guy, but I do know I'm not going to pattern some of my career after this guy. But you make good choices that way.
I think that there's definitely a sense of that cliche, never meet your heroes. The people who have watched for generations and got them through their lives, I don't think that they all need to see Ric Flair doing the helicopter with his penis. Like, I don't really think it's good for everybody to know this about their heroes, Some of these guys are freaks.
I feel this is trying to portray someone as this sexual predator, and it's not. It's a joke, it's a gag. And today, 1000% inappropriate. My hairstyle is inappropriate right now. I am somehow offending someone right now with my ponytail. How dare I have
Relax.
2 ponytails? And my answer is I'm 50 years old, I'm happy I have hair. But if you're asking me, I've hung out with Ric Flair. I've never seen him try to.
This dude is totally like a douchebag right now. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I don't like the way he's approaching this. Like, be an adult for a second. Stop trying to be a contrarian and just be an adult.
Force his will against anybody.
I don't feel that his intent was to rape me. But what he did was wrong. It was wrong, and he goes to sleep that night and thinks he made it back from his wrestling trip in Europe, and maybe he has a headache because he had too many cocktails on the airplane. And yet, that night I didn't go to sleep. My trip to work, my trip to get money to support my daughter becomes a memory that is mine forever to live with. Like, I get to live with the fact that I had to see a naked man and get my face licked by a man that I was there to make sure he got from point A to point B safe. And they went to sleep and thought they made it home safe and sound, and so goes on the world, you know? I was uncomfortable coming to talk about this, because you see some stories get told and then people get ridiculed, or they're everything picked apart as what they did wrong when they're just telling a story. But if one person that listens to this says, oh my gosh, I might have acted like that towards somebody and I didn't even realize I did it. Or if one person hears that they had something happen to them that they didn't like, and they didn't feel they could speak about it because they'd get in trouble, or they were made to feel that they created the situation and might have made it happen. Like, if it can change it for one person, I'd sit and have this conversation 25 times again. The truth can be scary, and the truth can be ugly and messy, but at the end of the day, the truth is the thing that makes us better.
All right, looks like that's it. You know, honestly, I mean, it's a wild story. It's a wild story for real. And I mean, again, we're hearing about it now. I never knew about this whole situation, but I mean, I will say that there's a line there. There is always a line. Like, when you're dealing with, when you are, I mean, and this situation is unique. Well, somewhat unique, because these cats were literally like throwing down, and it was going nuts. It was pandemonium on the plane. Like, that's not something that I've ever witnessed in football at all. But, you know, if you get into these kind of like environments where there's a bunch of antics going on and motherfuckers are just acting like little kids and you know, just doing too much, there's always a line when you're dealing with people who don't know you like that. There's a line you got to be careful not to cross, because if you don't know somebody, you don't know what really gets under their skin. You don't know what pisses them off. So you always kind of err on the side of caution until you understand, or those people understand how you are, and you understand how they are. And I think, you know, sometimes in that I know in that time, with as big as those celebrities were and as big as those personalities were, shit, I'm not surprised that this type of thing happened. And, you know, it's unfortunate and it ain't right. And it's at least, with this whole thing coming out, it's at least just kind of putting it to, I mean, I would assume kind of putting it to bed, so that, you know, the people, you know, people know what the situation is. And I mean, hey, you know, some of these folks have passed away since then. So what do you do now? You know what I mean? I mean, Ric Flair is catching his flack right now. He's losing sponsors, losing endorsements. So, I mean, there's a price that's paid, and it comes full circle sooner or later. So really, this kind of just solidified that and closed that circle, which is a good thing, which is a good thing in the general sense of there's at least some closure there. But I thought this was a pretty interesting episode. Pretty interesting episode. It's wild how these cats were they just drank through the entire stock of liquor 3 times over. And you could just, I mean, just listening to it, you know that those seeds were being planted for it to be one ridiculously crazy ride across the Atlantic. But that is going to be it for this Lineman Life. I am about to jump off of here. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I will try to be on this weekend to do some gaming. We'll see how that plays out. But make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you share this. It's a little thin tonight, but that's to be expected. It's the weekend, and we weren't really going into any real football stuff. So not a big deal. I really enjoyed the time with you guys in here regardless. So I hope everyone has a good weekend. I'm about to jump off. I will talk to you guys on the next live stream.